Hello. I am very envious of today's
Hmm.
guest because she is 5 weeks staying in Montalcino, Italy.
That
Welcome,
is correct.
Julie. Happy to have you. I
So
know
good to
we've
be.
interacted with you on social media. We were just talking about I
Yeah.
not so much, but happy to
Welcome.
have you here.
It's happy to be here. I have really enjoyed everything you guys have done and have tried as much as I can to get your message out whenever I can too, because it
Thank
is
you.
so important.
Yes.
So
This is why
We
you
just
pop up on our social media because you're a
yeah.
sharer.
we just talked to somebody who was born in the 80s and it was still the same thing, nothing, no trauma informed, no nothing, even then she went to school, studied therapy, still no uh, adoption
Yeah.
informed
Mm-mm.
schooling,
Nope.
it's such an uphill battle, isn't it?
No, in my opinion, it's an epidemic.
Epidemic is a good
Oh, it's a
word.
good word for it.
Yeah, I have my master's degree in counseling myself. And at the time, really how this even started, me knowing that there was an issue in my life because of adoption started because of my master's program. So I
Wow.
started in 2009 for my master's for counseling. And when I was living in Hawaii at the time, in Maui, another wonderful place to live, and I had to fly all the way to Virginia to have intensive classes for my program. And my professor was a foster parent.
Uh,
And she said to me, "You have got to deal with the skeletons in your closet with adoption. If you don't, you will harm people." And I was like,
Wow.
what skeletons in my closet? At the time, I had zero idea what she was talking about, completely in the fog, no idea. Had been searching only because I had, children and wanted to know the medical stuff as all adoptees do. But when she said that, I immediately kicked into overdrive and was like, I have to figure this out. If I don't figure this out, I'm going to harm people. And that's the last thing I want to do. So that's actually what started this was my
what a
master's
great
program.
professor.
It comes to mind. There was a movie I saw years ago called Damage with Juliette
Oh,
Binoche, and
yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
book too.
Yeah.
But there was a line in it. Maybe the line was in the book. Be careful of damaged people. They know how to survive. And
Yes.
it's that you saying that is like, wow. I think of the carnage in my path from being unaware,
Mm,
and yeah,
yeah.
what an eye opener, huh?
Oh my goodness. And I don't, now looking back, I'm unbelievably grateful. At the time, I almost had this feeling of what nerve?
Oh, right. You're
like,
probably
like
offended, a little bit offended.
kind of like, who are you? You don't even know me. But
Right.
then I realized when I got home and I started doing the research and I started working with the social worker, because I am adopted from California. So
Right.
Louise, how
Yeah.
hideous
Yeah.
California is.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not strange,
so
California. Get your act together. Come on.
I
Yeah.
just don't,
I lived
I
there
don't
for years
Yeah.
too.
understand.
So
I know you did. It's ridiculous. So many different things, issues like hoops I've had to jump through, as I'm sure you've heard from many adoptees, to try to get things like my passport. I had to get a passport and they wouldn't take my birth certificate. So I had to actually, because it wasn't official enough, the
Right.
birth certificate that
your
I had. So I
adoptive birth
actually,
certificate, you mean?
my adopted birth certificate.
This happened to a
Yes.
friend of mine here, and she's going
Yeah.
today. She's going today to try with this full
I'm
folder
going to show it
to
to
get
you.
her
Yeah.
passport for the first time at 58.
This is my original birth certificate, the one that I know of. I'm sorry, it's not my original
No,
birth
not the
certificate.
original.
Right.
It's the
It's
fake
what they
one.
sent me. This is it. And
It's the one with full of lies.
yeah, exactly. And what's so crazy is all they did was photocopy it on California letterhead and
Oh,
send it back to me to send to my passport. I was like,
oh, I could have done that. Like, it's
it was
ridiculous.
ridiculous. So anyway, that's one hoop that I've had to jump through. It was an absolute
Yeah.
nightmare. And then having to get my paperwork from them, the social worker, and I will name her because I just want her name to be known. Her name was Terry Meeks. I had worked with multiple up until that point. This was 2010 at this point. And one of the first things she said to me was, "I know the degree you're getting, and I really want to give you as much information as I can legally. Unheard of in California. They
Right.
don't do that. And so she sent me a 6-page document, which that's shocking. Usually it's one sheet, right? A 6-page document from May of my pregnancy, when my birth mother was pregnant, all the way through to after I was born. And it had the play-by-play of what the social worker had written on it.
Oh,
And
I just got
it
mine
was,
too. It's devastating, isn't it?
I wish I
oh
had
my
that.
gosh. And it's not, I know there's more. This was
Mhm.
her weeding out things and taking out things that didn't identify my birth mother at the time, because I hadn't found her yet, but I found her within weeks of that.
Move a
And
little closer, Julie.
okay, sorry, here I come. So I was honestly, when I read it, she warned me. She said, and my husband at the time was with me in the room, and she said, you need to prepare yourself before you get this information. And her exact words were, because it's gnarly.
Mm.
Wow.
Okay, what does that even mean?
Well,
So
yeah.
I journaled about it. And in that journal entry, it talks about me thinking she was a prostitute, me thinking that she was a vagabond and, ran away and things like this. And I was very close to right. What ended up happening was she was 16 at the time she got pregnant, but she had hitchhiked from California at that age on semi trucks
Oh
to
boy.
Colorado, had been at a party in the courtyard of my birth father's apartment complex, hooked up with him that night, and he left the next day to go to work, came home from work, and found her in bed with his 2 roommates.
Oh,
So when I first met her on the phone, weeks after all of this happened, all of this transpired from my foster parents, from the professor who told me I needed to do this. Weeks later, I found her, and one of the first things she said to me was, it was the 70s. It was one of 3 guys. So I was just like, okay. Yeah, because I was born in 1973. So I was just on the
right.
other side of baby scoop.
Mm.
And
At her age, did she have some, I mean, you don't have to say her story, but she must have had some trauma maybe where she was obviously that
Running
young,
away and
running away.
hitchhiking.
Yeah, she was not one of those that was sent away. Obviously she got pregnant, didn't even know she was pregnant, left and went home, found out she was pregnant. And so trauma-wise, yeah, I'm sure stuff happened. I mean, if she was a prostitute, and
Yeah.
according to my half sister,
She was she a sex worker?
Mm,
according to my sister,
so young.
she was. Now I don't know, probably at that, I mean, I don't know. She ran away. She ran away multiple times. It's like in the paperwork. So I see that. It says that she ran away.
So something's going on there at her home when she's a
Right. Oh
child.
no. She
Yeah.
told me that her mom, so the grandmother that is not alive anymore, she died recently. She was abusive, and she told me stories of her hanging her from like a shower curtain. I mean,
Oh
just
God.
not good
Oh
stuff.
gosh.
So
She wasn't adopted, was she?
no, she was not. So she obviously had trauma, ran away, all of that. But she wasn't one who was sent away and
Right.
what's the word?
Yeah.
Looked down
Shamed.
upon.
Yeah.
That didn't happen to her. What ended up happening was once she found out, okay, guys, this is what's crazy. January is when Roe v. Wade passed of 1973.
Right.
Okay. She attempted to abort me twice. It was 12 weeks of pregnancy, between 12 and 16. So she tried 2 times to abort me, but couldn't because she had venereal diseases. So
Oh.
they wouldn't let her. And so she ended up having to give me up for adoption. So you can see that there was this, for me, I didn't have a lot of good feelings towards this woman initially. The minute I read that, that's what she was trying to prepare me for. That's
Okay.
what was gnarly, is that she attempted to abort you twice.
Yeah.
And so there was two things that came from that for me. I'm supposed to be here.
You're
That was
tough as
the
hell.
one.
You're tough as hell.
Yep. And the second one was she freaking didn't want to have anything to do with me. Now, but I tried to put myself in her shoes. And I talked to you guys a while ago back and
Yeah.
forth on the socials about EMDR
Yeah.
and how much
I've been doing it.
that really helped me to kind of get to a place of forgiveness with her.
Mhm.
She died in 2020. And I was there,
Okay.
not when she died, but I was there. Like I actually went, that's a whole other story. We don't need to go into that, but unless you want me to, but I just felt like, I've forgiven her to her face, but I don't want her to leave this world feeling like she's not okay with me. And so I was able to do that there, and say goodbye, and it was good. But honestly, between her and I, there wasn't a lot of, how people say there's this immediate, like, energetic
Yeah.
feeling. I didn't have that with her. And I was very, very surprised. But I think part of that was I was still really in the fog. Like it was hard for me to connect with her. It was
I had
really
the
hard for me to
same
connect with
thing.
anyone. Yeah. I think I
Same.
remember you saying that. Yeah. Not to me, but of course, listening to the podcast, I've heard
Yeah.
you
Right.
say that.
Right.
So I think it was really difficult for me because I hear all these stories, even now when I listen to all the podcasts that I listen to, of just this massive connection with the birth mother. I didn't have that. And so
Yeah.
there was this piece of me, that longing was still there. I definitely saw my face. I looked like her. It was the first time I've ever been mirrored, all those things besides my children. But she just wasn't the most safe, to be honest, for me. There were some things that happened that felt very unstable. And so there wasn't a lot of connection. And it wasn't because I didn't try or she didn't try. It just fell flat. And so it was really interesting. So the interesting part of the beginning of my life was the 2 abortions that she attempted, right? And then this is going to freak you guys out, I
But
think.
she had STDs, right? Were you
Yeah.
born with an STD?
That's what I was
Did
gonna
it affect
say.
your birth?
Well, no, as far as I know, but there's a couple of things that are really interesting about it. So I was born September 7th. 3 days
We're all
later,
September babies here.
right?
Coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I was 3 days later given into the foster care system. They took me away, just like you guys talked about. They whisked me away. I didn't actually go into her hands at all. They took me and put me into the nursery.
Same.
A woman, this is so random. A woman came into the room where my birth mother was, random woman, and said, please don't give your daughter up for adoption. I want her.
What?
To my birth. And this is recorded in my paperwork.
Who's the
Weird.
woman? Like a nurse
Random woman. Nobody
hanging
knew.
out in the hospital?
It was very odd. It happened twice. She came in, my birth mother and my aunt were there, and my aunt was like, leave. We don't want you here. What are you doing here? I mean, it was just
Who are you,
weird.
weirdo? Freak?
Exactly.
That's a little
Stalker?
strange.
Well, and then the crazy thing is, she had the gall to go down and hold me in the nursery.
Who
This
was
woman?
this person?
I don't know who this woman was. There's no name. It's just in my paperwork. It's recorded.
Someone hanging out waiting for young women to give up children or something.
Who knows? But it was
Bizarre.
crazy. And then, so that happened. And then she relinquished me at that point into foster care. And then my foster family had me until around 7 weeks. And then they basically said they could no longer accommodate me. So they relinquished me back to the state at 7 weeks. And at this point, let me think. My birth mother hadn't signed the papers away yet. She disappeared. So she hadn't relinquished me or said.
You're in limbo.
Correct. And so they couldn't do anything with me until she did. And she finally showed up, randomly signed the papers, said she wanted somebody who lived by the ocean. I mean, she was a free spirit 70s person.
And so young, right? I mean, young.
Yeah.
17. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was that. And then the way that my adopted family got me was they made a phone call because they were on the top of the list. My adopted family was on the top of the list. And my mom, the one who raised me, who's here right now in Italy with me, said, Julie, it was meant to be that you were with us, because it's a whole other story, but basically their paperwork had been lost. And they called them, and my mom had called and said, we are waiting for a child. What's going on? And they were like, we don't have any of your paperwork. What? You've done the home study. We have a canceled check. Like, there was all this stuff. It was because in my mom's mind, it was me that they were waiting for, which is really sweet. I mean, I love that. And she's wonderful. My adopted mom is wonderful.
What
And
were the
so,
circumstances that they were adopting
Mhm.
you?
no, infertility. Yeah.
Yeah.
They couldn't. Yeah.
And
You're
were
no-
you the first? Did they have, I mean, were you
Good
the
question.
first?
I was the second. My brother was 2 years, 9 months older than me, and he is also adopted. So we are
Okay.
both adopted. Yeah.
Hmm.
I meant to tell you that. I'm sorry.
No
So
worries.
obviously 2 totally different families. You guys know, I mean,
Mhm.
that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
so, but my mom and dad, who raised me, even before they got married, talked about adopting, because they actually had a conversation. If we can't, how do you feel about adopting? And they just kind of made the decision that they weren't going to try. Like, meaning if they couldn't naturally get pregnant, they were just going to adopt. They weren't going to do infertility. They weren't going to do anything, but they knew it wasn't working and they weren't going to try even harder. They were going to adopt. So that's where that came from. There wasn't a lot of, according to my mom, this grief of losing something that she didn't have. It was, she'd
Yeah.
kind of come to the conclusion already that that may happen, which I think is interesting.
Did they ever get pregnant naturally?
That's
Because
what
that
I was
happens
wondering.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It happens a lot, but no,
Mhm.
they didn't. So what ended up happening was she gets a call. She's on vacation in Palm Desert, and they said, can you come? We have a girl for you. And my mom
The
drove the
timing.
hour, however long. Yeah. And they held me for 45 minutes. And the lady came in and goes, we kind of have an interesting situation. We can't do the 3-day placement. Can you take her now? And my parents were like, we don't have diapers. We don't have. So, but they did. They took me home. And this is the answer to, I'm getting a roundabout way, the answer to your question of, could there be an STD? Could there be drugs, you know, that were in my system somehow? I don't know, because my birth mother did do them, but she said she didn't. So there was some stuff written that was really hard to read on my
Mhm.
paperwork that talked about morphine, speed,
Mm.
these types of drugs. But I slept for 24 hours once my
Oh.
mom brought me home. And
Oh, you're in such stress as a baby.
yeah, so I think I must have known in my spirit that I was home, even though I understand that this is an adoption situation, but I felt safe there, I think, or else I don't know if I would have slept like that. So there's that, or I was so traumatized that I had to sleep. And I mean, I just don't know. So there was that.
Combination of
And
both, maybe.
yeah, I think
You
it
just think
probably
about a
was.
baby, right? Going from first year to foster family, who knows how they are, good, bad, or the ugly. Then you
Mhm.
go back to the state, which is never a wonderful situation.
No. I mean, 4 relinquishments in my first 7 weeks of life.
Right.
Before I had language.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is traumatic, right?
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, I didn't realize how traumatic it was until probably 3.5, 4 years ago. It just
Right.
didn't
And
dawn on me.
it's same
Same.
with us. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
Louise and I paid a lot of lip service joking. Yeah, I was adopted, but like we, but not connecting, not really emotionally
No.
connecting, right? It's a
Yeah,
it's a
it's
spectrum.
crazy.
Some people come really early, other people
Yeah.
True.
never.
True.
Many
I
people in their
think
50s.
yes, and I think my brother will probably be one of those. That is one of the nevers,
Mm.
potentially. He
And
and I
we know
talk
some
about
of
it, but
those. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I know.
We've
And I just,
interviewed a couple of those.
I know you have. What I do know is that EMDR, that second time through it that I did it, I've done it 3 times, and that second time through it, was the first time I was able to actually access my baby mind. And it
Oh,
wasn't even mind, it was like emotion, because I didn't really have words at that point, right?
Mhm.
So she told me, go get a pillow, and I was like, why? I mean, I didn't understand. And at this point, I hadn't done any of the somatic work that I
oh,
do
right.
now and that I talk about and that I teach. But so it was really hard for me to get in touch with where I felt it in my body, which is what she was trying to get me to do. All that happened when she took me back to that womb spot of me being born and given away was I have never cried, I don't think, ever in my life like that. It was this guttural scream. And that's the reason why she asked me to get the pillow. She's done this. She's been trained in this. There's some of them out there that can
Yeah.
actually do this, and took me through it. And when I finished just getting all of it out, she said, I'm so sorry to leave you here, because we were at the end of the session. And my response to her was, no, thank you so much for leaving me here. I've never experienced those feelings. And I feel so freed now. Like,
Do you just
I don't
feel
even know how to
lighter, like a
oh,
lighter?
yeah, it was like, now I get it. I can understand what I was feeling as a baby now. And so many people that don't go through what we've been through, they can't understand that. You try
No.
to explain that to them, and that's like too deep, way too deep for them to
I see
get
the glaze over in the eyes when you try to
Yes.
explain things. You're like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna,
And it's so,
You're
I
gonna
know,
talk
I'll
about
just
this
shut up now.
again?
right.
I know. Yes. And it just
Here
feels
we
like,
go again.
yeah, this is my life.
Move on.
It's
Yeah.
so, anyway, yeah. So that was huge for me. And literally, you guys, so my now ex-husband's dad died right around the time that this was happening, right around the time that I was really surfacing all of this stuff.
You were still married at that time?
Still married. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been divorced for about 9 months. So it's
Oh,
fairly
okay.
new, and it's really sad.
Gosh. Yeah. Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
it's okay. I mean,
Mm.
it is okay. I'm going to be okay, but it's
You
definitely
will.
hard. And I think there's a lot from the adoption that's impacted that, but I'm not taking all of the credit for that. There's way more to it, and we don't need to get into that. But all of that to say, his dad died. My dad that raised me had died when I was 15 years old. So
Oh,
I hadn't gotten to that part. Sorry, I skipped over a bunch of stuff, but I was raised in a family by my adopted parents. My dad had a massive heart attack when he was 45 and died when I was 15. And our relationship was hard. So
Your relationship was hard prior to that?
with
So
him, yeah, because
were you not close or?
so this is interesting. I'll get to the next part in a minute, but I have memories of standing in my hallway growing up and staring at my family picture and trying to find resemblance. I think we've all probably
Yeah.
done that.
Mhm.
But for hours trying to figure out, how do I fit in here?
Yeah.
Like and I think I looked more like my dad. And so, even though I didn't, so there was part of me that felt connected because of that. But he was a my way or the highway kind of guy. He was kind of a workaholic. I do believe he drank a lot, but he loved me fiercely. He truly did. But there were periods in that latter part of my teenage years before he died, latter part to him, because he died when I was 15,
Right.
where that last year was really hard. And we had a huge fight the night before he actually died.
Oh,
And he died the next day. And so part of me just felt so vacant after that happened, numb, like I don't even know how to describe it. I've obviously since worked through that and been able to forgive myself for how I treated him at the time, forgiven him for how he handled the situation. I was decorating for homecoming. So I was a part of the home. I was 15. So I was a
yeah.
part of the homecoming decorating committee. And the parent that was picking me up, the age of no cell phones, I was 15. I couldn't drive. So she was late. So I was late getting home from my curfew, and he was livid at me for being late. And so we just had a really big fight. And that's how our relationship ended. And
Mm.
so
I could see
Really,
that,
really
Julie.
tough.
I had some tumultuous years with my dad, and then we were really close, and then tumultuous years, then close. So if he had
Mhm.
died during those, we had some doozy fights. That would have been a lot
Yeah.
for you to carry around. Like, what the?
Yes.
You already got enough guilt.
Totally. And my mom was wonderful about it. She just didn't know how to deal with it. She was
Right.
grieving. I mean, this was her husband. And they were, you know, they were married for a long time, 20 something years at that point. And so it was tough. And so I think the
Yeah.
dad that I knew at that point was my husband's father. He'd been my father
Oh,
for 25
Mm.
years. So he died of cancer. 3 months later, well, he died of cancer in October. I asked for 23andMe. So here it goes. I asked for 23andMe for Christmas, and my husband gave it to me at the time. And I found out 3 months later that I was 50% Italian, that I had a half sister, that I actually do have a birth father. Didn't know that because my birth mother said he was probably dead. But how would she know? She didn't even know
Right.
which one he was. And so we
it's
we have this
convenient.
joke. Yeah, I know, isn't it? We have this joke that I'm Mamma Mia because literally it was one of three guys
Right?
and
Totally.
didn't know which one it was. And so what ended up happening was it said I had a half sister. And I was like, well, I already have a half sister. And my husband at the time was like, well, but this is a different half sister, Julie. This isn't the one from your mom, right? What's her name? And I was like, oh, yeah, her name's different. I just was having a hard time cluing into the fact
No, it's
that I could
bizarre.
have, yeah, that I could have more people out there. So I found them 2 days later. I sent her very, it makes me think of Friends when Monica goes, this is me being breezy. Like that's how I was being with my sister. This is me being breezy. Hello, I don't need anything from you, but I think you should know I exist. And she messaged me back 2 days later, and which I was shocked about. I thought it would take forever. But the reason why is because she had told her husband, hey, I think I have a sister. And his immediate response was, oh, she's a gold digger. She wants all your
Oh my
money.
gosh.
But Brian is amazing. So he said that, but then Mariah took a picture of me from Facebook and showed it to him. And he was like, oh, holy crap, that's your sister. Call your dad right now. Like it was just like face. I look exactly like the youngest sister.
You
She's
do.
16 and a half years younger than me. And so literally we look like we could be twins. I'm just 16 years older than her.
Did
So
did
anyway,
did your father did he know your mom? Like who your mom was?
he remembered, but it took him 24 hours. I mean, it was a hookup. That was
It
it.
was that guy. I
Right.
just wondered, yeah.
Right? Like
Hook
I
up at
thought
a
the same thing. I
party.
mean, yes, exactly. So I mean, it was
That's how
just
my
like,
birth mother was born. My
Oh, yeah.
biological grandmother, I think, hooked up with a guy at a party or something like that. Anyway, yeah, in the
it's so
40s.
crazy, right? Right. I mean,
Ham
that's even
parties.
crazier. Um, so she told him, said, please sit down. You have a daughter. Um, this is what she told me. Does this sound familiar? And he said, I mean, at this time he was 67. And he said, I need to think about this for a minute.
Hold
And
on.
yeah,
Cha-ching. A male in the 70s. Okay, let's
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
and the crazy thing is, you guys, he only lived in Colorado for 6 months. The rest of his life was
Oh,
in Utah. So this was a blip in his life.
I was hoping it
So
wasn't my biological dad who is a
Wow.
trucker and lives in Utah. I mean, in Colorado. I was like,
wouldn't
wouldn't that
that
be
be
weird?
funny?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what ended up happening was he called 23andMe and said, I
Oh,
just need to know
He,
that your stuff is accurate.
oh, he wanted to
oh my
verify it.
gosh.
He
He got on the
wasn't,
phone and called
he
them.
did. I think it wasn't because
He did his
honestly, you
due
guys,
diligence.
it sounds so bad, but
No,
he's
it doesn't.
wonderful. He is wonderful. But I think he wanted to know first. He didn't know anything about this. Like he just wanted to know. And they were like, oh,
Yeah, I
yes, our
mean, I
stuff is
get it.
We're
accurate.
we're
So
pretty accurate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so he called Mariah back and said, I think something like this. I could be
Uh,
getting this completely wrong because I wasn't a part of those conversations, but he said, please give her my email. This is a blessing. I want to
oh,
hear from her.
Aw.
And So thank God, because my birth mother situation just felt so like, ugh, I
Yeah.
didn't like it. And I just wasn't even expecting this. It came out of nowhere 3 months after I had lost my my father-in-law that I loved so much. So it felt like a gift almost to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, we talked that Friday and just talked and talked and talked. And I talked to my sister too, and it was wonderful. And we've had our ups and downs, just like any reunion would, right? Yeah. But we're still together. I mean, they've been messaging me consistently because they've been here multiple times.
Are
They're
they the
Italian.
Italian side, obviously?
Yeah. So this is the Italian side. So me being here, they're constant, and he messages me every night or every morning and says good morning to me and that he loves me. And it's very,
nice.
very sweet. And so I got to spend the first birthday with him in September after I found him. And then our family went and spent Christmas with them that first Christmas. And I've seen them at least once or twice a year since then. And I'm so very grateful. It's been, I feel, so there's two things that are interesting about this. The first one is, initially when I found them, I felt like my soul kind of locked into place. Like, you know, those puzzle pieces that you can see that are just kind of out there when you're trying to put a puzzle together and it feels like they don't fit in. I'm sure you understand this.
Yes.
There was this feeling of they all fit now. Now, the belonging piece didn't come till later. And it wasn't because of them. This is what I realized and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing to help adoptees is because what I realized was it's not from them.
No.
That belonging actually doesn't come from them. It comes from within me and me finding worth within me and knowing that my resilience means something and that I'm put on this earth for a purpose. And that finding that and aligning with that has been, I mean, that's my life's work, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, it's been really cool to.
Can adoptees get in touch with you? Like are you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Through my Instagram or my Facebook.
Okay. We'll put that.
They absolutely can. I have such a passion for this and I'm still in the process of really kind of creating and pulling so much out of my head of the things that I've learned as a trained counselor that would be helpful. Because like you guys talked about at the beginning, we aren't trained at all. Like we have to seek that training outside. There is adoptee competent training, but it's not a part of the programs that I've seen.
No.
And I just think there's 5 million of us.
I know.
Right. It's negligible to not have
Yes.
that be
Good
a
word.
part of the training because
No, especially as we know, because of the amount of trauma that we experience, because of the amount of suicide, the overpopulation of the jails because of this. I mean,
right?
it's just like, anyway, so that's a whole other, we could do a whole podcast on that, but
Yeah.
yes.
So that's the reason why I just feel so strongly that there needs to be more competent helpers out there.
Yeah.
And so
people really gloss over that, don't they? While you're saying that because I think the thing is if you know someone happy who had a nice adoption, like I love my family, had a nice adoption, then they're fine. But the thing is, it's so big. Like when you say those numbers, it always hits me how big that really is, that people are
I mean, when
damaged
you
just
really,
from this.
right, when you really think about like we've all had children,
Yes.
when you think about the profundity of that loss,
Yeah.
and that, you know, that it's there's aside from all those statistics, then there's also autoimmune diseases
Yes.
and
yes,
there's so much and
Even
it's just not
relationship issues.
acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's just not acknowledged and it needs to be really widely acknowledged.
yeah.
I agree.
No, I
So,
absolutely agree. But I also want to say, you know, my story sounds, you know, flowery, nice, whatever. And there are parts that are for sure. But as you know, we all have the traumas within those.
Oh, for sure.
And I think even through all of, as a resilient adoptee, I honestly think that should be our name. All of us
A
should
resilient
have tattooed
adoptee.
on our forehead because we just are. I just think because of that, and thankfully the schooling that I've had has
Mm,
helped me seek more and more health for myself. And
right.
so my marriage and I had a responsibility in that failed partly because of my fear of intimacy. I
Oh,
think we all,
Oh, yeah.
I
hi.
know you guys are looking at, I
You can
know,
write
I
my
mean,
ex-husband. He'd give you a
right?
book about
At
it.
least you're married, Louise.
Well,
I've
that's
taken
true.
the other route of complete aloneness.
I know. Well, and I am right now too. And so I
Oh my
sit here and
goodness.
I worked really hard in my marriage to
Me
become,
too. And I still didn't
I
do the
still
right
didn't either.
work. I didn't do the right
No.
work. That's the
And
problem.
well, it was
We
it's
worked, we did
heartbreaking.
therapy,
We did too.
we talked, we were good friends. I mean, we did,
Yep.
when people say you earn your way out, I
Yeah.
earned my way out and so did he. But now I look back and think, oh, I was working on all the wrong things.
Yeah. No, I was too. And what's been so interesting since I've been here, I've
Mhm.
kind of, this has been heavenly. And this is one of the things I'm doing while I'm here, because besides that, I'm like sabbaticaling, if you will,
Good.
from my life, because I just needed a recharge after everything that's
Yeah.
happened. And so I think for me, I decided I'm going to bring all of my journals from 2018 to current, and I've been reading them and just getting to know who I was then and what I felt like I was fighting for, and kind of falling in love. This sounds crazy, but kind of falling in love with myself again. Like
Oh,
I worked so hard to become a great wife. I really did. And
yeah.
it may not have been what needed to be at the time, but I can't change that. I can't look back and fix
No.
that, I can't. And so, but what you were talking about is those relationship patterns that a
Yes.
lot of adoptees have. I totally understand that, because I myself have done the same thing. I've done it in friendship too.
Oh, me
I
too.
wonder, you guys have too, right? Like where
We've talked about this, Sarah and myself, that we have lots of friendships. I mean, you look back and you're like, okay, this is why we're here. I mean, it's so much easier to look back, but I'm trying not to have regret about things either, or whatever. I
right.
mean,
No,
you only know what you know until you don't learn something new, right?
exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of being able to self-forgive,
Hmm.
self-love, all of that. We need that to be able to give to others at all. We don't have
Hmm.
much to give if we can't. And
Well,
so,
and I think you have to go through um, a grieving
Hmm.
process
absolutely.
when the veil is pulled back and you realize the scope of this. There's a lot of grief. I mean, it can take, for me, I'm in the midst of it still.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you have to
Yeah,
kind of
I
go through
absolutely
that.
agree.
Yeah.
Yep, I absolutely agree. That book, The 7 Core Issues of Adoption and Permanency. Have you
Yeah.
guys heard of that book?
We have. I haven't read it.
I haven't read
Yeah,
it
I mean,
either.
it's more of like a textbook, sort
Yeah,
of.
that's what
It's not
everyone
something that
says. Yeah.
you would read for your podcast, probably, unless you wanted to. But it talks about, shame, guilt, grief, loss, intimacy issues being some of the core issues. I can't think of the other two right now, and I didn't bring it with me because I decided not to.
Yeah.
But
Good.
I wanted to really focus on rest while I was here.
Sabbatical.
But exactly. But it's true. I am grieving too. There are times where I could be doing yoga over here in Italy, amazingly. It's awesome. And all of a sudden I just start crying. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll just let that come.
Same. That's what
Yeah.
I've been
Right?
going through too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, and you have to let it come. If you stuff it and
No,
push
you
down
have
and
to let yourself feel bad. You just do,
yep.
and it sucks. I had a therapist who was
Oh,
really
The
big
only
on that.
way out is through is
Yeah,
the cliche, but it's
no,
true.
it
it's
is. But
true.
so many people
Sarah's
run the
right.
opposite direction from that because of fear of the pain.
That's
But that
horrible.
pain is what refines us. And so I
Yeah.
think it's learning how to lean into that pain
Hmm.
and then find the community like you guys have created to be able to feel I've got other people who know what I'm talking about and don't glaze over when they talk to me.
Right.
And I mean, gosh, there's something so powerful about that. So anyway, I'm so
We
grateful
had
for
a
you
girl in
guys.
our adoptee, a young woman, and she's a young woman in our adoptee group the other night say, we hold space for each other. And I
Yep.
like to think of it that way because other people, you can see them trying to listen and understand. And then you don't say what you want to say because you're looking at their reaction. You know, it's
Well,
a
and
whole
they're
thing.
often people will say, well, I had blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
They,
It's like, okay, but that's
but there's
not
just a
what we're
space
talking
where
about.
we can
Yeah.
say,
No.
okay, and say, God,
Yeah.
that really hurts. I'm sorry. You know, like it
Yeah.
just
It's true.
is. Yeah.
Hey,
Well, it's
Julie, I have a,
interesting.
I do have a question, before we
Yeah.
wrap up. A couple of questions. One is, so your father never had other children,
Mm,
just the one other daughter that's 16 and a half years younger?
No. Okay. So my birth father I have a 16-and-a-half-year-old younger sister, a 14-year-old younger brother from him and his current wife. So they're
okay.
still together. And then Mariah, who was the one I discovered on 23andMe, she and I are a year and a half apart. And I don't know if I think he'll be okay with me saying this, but he calls us his pre-Jesus babies.
Oh,
Which I'm sorry. I just think that's really funny. He lives in Utah, but he's not Mormon. That was another first thing that he told me as soon as I'm not Mormon. I'm like, oh, okay. But she's a year and a half younger than me. So I am the oldest. He has 3 other brothers that are older than him. And I'm the oldest grandchild and he's the youngest kid, which
oh,
is
interesting.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then with your biological mother, only the
Mm,
one sister, and are you still in touch with that sister? And
yes, only the one sister. And yes, I am, but it's a very challenging situation in
yeah.
my opinion. It's
was she raised
difficult.
by her?
Yes, she was raised by her.
And
And I was talking to my mom about this earlier, like, what do I share? Because it's hers. It's not mine to
Right.
share.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
I respect that. And, but yeah, our relationship has been a little different, for sure. Just because how she was raised was rough, like
Yeah.
really. I can't even imagine how I would have been raised if I was raised that way. And I could have been, very easily could have been if she would
Right.
have kept me. So
well,
interestingly, there is
like,
a lot of gratitude for
you can
that.
apply the damage line to your
Yes.
biological mother,
Yes, you can. You can. Very, very
Mm.
And
true.
Julie, with your adopted mom that you're in Italy with, did your father, your birth father and all
Yeah.
that? And how
Okay.
is she
So
with everything?
yeah. So she initially, when I first decided I wanted to meet my birth mother in 2010, I didn't want to do it without her there. And so I let her know that this was my plan because we were living in Hawaii at the time and we were going to be coming to Washington State, which is where my birth mother lived. And so I said, can you please meet me up there and we'll go meet her and my sister. So I met my half sister at that time too. And my kids at the time, I think were like, if it was 10, then they were 6 and 8.
Oh, young.
And so they were young and she was like, they hugged. She was grateful, but she definitely felt a bit threatened by her for sure.
Mm.
But she didn't have to be because I definitely did not feel that at all.
It's
Um,
probably, when I think about them, adoptive parents being threatened, or particularly the mother, I think it's less to do with um
Mm,
what relationship you might have, and maybe more to do with, oh, she gave birth to you. I
yes.
couldn't give birth. She
I
gave
think you're right.
birth. I think that's more it's
Yeah.
a deeper threat than just, oh, you're going to have a better relationship. You know what I mean?
No,
There's a
I
lot of layers with
totally.
that.
I absolutely agree. And I think early on, I didn't understand that. I just was like, you need to deal with this. This is my life. You need to figure it out. As I've gotten older, more sensitive and gentle, I think I've been able to recognize, and she really does appreciate my birth father and family. She's met them. It was interesting because when I first met them in I think we're winding down on time here, but in 2021,
Oh, not so long
my
ago. It was
yeah, no,
2021. Oh,
no, it was
okay.
2021. It was only 3
Yeah.
years ago with
Mm,
my birth father.
I missed
My
that.
son, my youngest, was graduating from high school and was really struggling. He's a very good student. I had actually homeschooled him, but he was doing his last 2 years in high school and then COVID hit. And then his grandfather died. and he
Mm.
just was not doing well.
Yeah.
And we were just hoping he would graduate. Like it was one of those, oh God, please help him. So
Right.
I find my birth father in all of this. And his wife, my half sister who lives 7 hours away from me in North Carolina, the one that's a year and a half younger than me, all came up for his graduation. It was beautiful. I mean,
Oh,
it was
that's so
so
nice.
cool. And so my mom was there, and my ex-husband's mom was there, my mother-in-law, who I still absolutely love and adore. So my father-in-law had already died, but they were all together in one place. And it was wonderful. Everybody felt, as far as I could tell, very loving, accepting. There was no weirdness. They sent each other Christmas gifts that year. I mean,
That's nice.
what is
Rare. Yeah.
It is rare. And so I'm so blessed and grateful for that. So yeah, so that's kind of how it is now.
Yeah. So she's open-hearted.
She is. It's
Yeah.
been hard. I mean, she hasn't had a husband for years, right? She's been a widow and
Yeah.
alone.
Mm.
And it's me and my brother. She has a very small family, and something that she's desperately wanted was a large family. So then she sees me marry into this large family that has 4 siblings and all these kids. And then my birth family has 4 siblings and all these kids. And she's
Yeah.
like, what about me? I don't want to get lost. And I keep telling her, you couldn't ever. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You raised me, and I'm grateful for you. So, and she does her best to understand my struggle, but I think it's really, I asked her to read Primal Wound, just because I think she would understand from an adopted mom's perspective.
Mm.
She just couldn't do it. She was afraid to read it and then find out that she was a horrible mother. And so that kind of broke my heart, because I was like, we could connect there if you would do that. But I get it. It's hard.
Yeah.
She gave so much to me. Like, I was her everything, still am. And not in an unhealthy way. I mean, she just
Yeah.
loves me, and I am so very grateful for that. So anyway.
Well,
Julie, it was so great to have you on, and really thank you for working out the time differences. And
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm like, can we just come to your little abode there
Yes.
in Tuscany? And
Where do you usually live?
yeah.
Oh yeah. Usually my home, this is totally not normal. Okay, everybody. I live in Virginia. I live in Northern
Okay.
Virginia. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm about 45 minutes from DC.
And for those of you on YouTube, you can see her Italian nails. She's got the flag
and
going.
the villa, the villa she's staying in.
I'm such a
And
tourist.
make sure to give us your information for our show notes, so that if people
Yes.
want to reach out to you for any kind of help.
Absolutely.
And
they
just
will.
like
Do
the
I
work.
email that to you guys?
Yeah, that'd be
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
I
the
got
work
it.
you're doing. It's nice for adoptees. Nice for us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you guys. You guys are, I know everybody says you're my friends, but I know you're not my friends yet.
Yes, you
but
are.
After we
Yeah,
talk
we
like
are.
this,
I feel
we're
like we
friends,
are.
man.
Yeah, I do.
I do feel like that with
You're gonna feel
our-
like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna land and be in Italy in about
Yeah,
3
we'll
days,
see you
and you're
soon.
you're
Yeah.
gonna go, oh,
Yeah,
they're my
come.
friends because
Oh my
they're
God,
here
that'd
at
be
my
so fun.
door.
And I think we have sons. We all have sons.
We
Isn't
all
that
have
right?
sons
Yeah.
in their 20s,
Best
right?
ever.
How
Yeah.
how old are your sons? In their 20s?
20 and 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we got the
Yeah.
boys.
Got the boys.
Love it.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much. Talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.